Solo leveling. Imagine being an E-rank hunter who risks their life to raise money for their mother's medical bills, but is so weak that you nearly die on the simplest missions and everyone doubts your capabilities. But you are given the chance to become the strongest hunter of all. This is the story of Sung Jinwoo. The manga starts off in the world of spirits and hunters. We are firstly introduced to gates. These gates hold great power as they connect their world to another dimension. We then learn that beyond these gates are dungeons where evil spirits lurk within. All of a sudden, a dungeon opens. The manga then transitions into the dungeon where we are introduced to hunters who are awakened beings who hunt down the evil spirits. They are in a fight battling many spirits. We then are introduced to the main character going by the name of Sung Jinwoo. He is classified as an E-rank hunter and almost dies in the easiest missions and is known as the weakest hunter of all mankind. He then explains that he needs to pay his mother's bills and can't afford to quit hunting. Jinwoo decides to go for a D-rank dungeon, but hidden within the dungeon lay the most perilous and scary test of all, a double dungeon. We see Jinwoo all beaten up in the dungeon and struggling to stay alive against three towering figures, and he claims that he wasn't able to avoid death. After suddenly waking up in the hospital room, Jinwoo receives a notification saying that his daily quest has arrived. Jinwoo looks confused as the quest asks him to do 100 push-ups, sit-ups, squats, and run 10 kilometers. From that day on, Jinwoo had a new ability and he was given a quest board that only he could see. Jinwoo constantly trained as he carried out quests. He hunted stronger monsters and leveled up even more. We then see Jinwoo fighting a towering green dragon and completely kills it and also levels up. Chapter 1 begins in Seoul, South Korea, where we see Sung Jinwoo again. Whilst walking slowly, he states that he has a slightly better build than the average human, but it would still be an embarrassment to call him a hunter. During Jinwoo's stroll, someone shouts at him, exclaiming that he's hurt again, and we learn that it's a girl going by the name of Juhi. She asks what happened to his face this time, and he explains the whole story to her, and Jinwoo suggests it's time for them to head back to the gate. Mr. Song Shiul stops everyone on their way and proposes the idea of him being the party leader. As he is one of the highest ranks out of everyone, they all approve. As they are about to head in, Mr. Song tells Jinwoo to stay behind them so he doesn't get hurt. As Jinwoo slowly enters the portal, he claims he'll do his best. The story then transitions to Juhi and Jinwoo. He has hurt himself again and Juhi is healing him. She asks him why he's so set on being a hunter and warns him that if he keeps fighting like this, he'll get into big trouble one of these days. Jinwoo apologizes, but Juhi responds by saying she wasn't looking for an apology and is just worried. We get a view of the raid battle and it's almost over. We then see a group of hunters stating that things are almost done around here and it was a piece of cake. Juhi notices Jinwoo staring at them and asks him if there's any way he can quit being a hunter, but Jinwoo lies and says that all this hunter stuff is just a hobby and would probably die of boredom if it wasn't for it. We then see Mr. Song Shiul holding a bright stone, and he explains that after defeating a beast, you are awarded an essence stone. Defeating a C-rank beast can get you a stone worth over 10 million won, which is equivalent to approximately 8,000 United States dollars. Jinwoo managed to get an essence stone, but he is depressed because he only got an E-rank stone for hurting himself. After that, we see one of the people from the group has discovered another entrance. They all gather there and Mr. Song realizes it is a double dungeon. He then charges a fire spell up and shoots it down the dungeon. After the explosion, Mr. Song calls in everyone and tells them that the gate will not close unless they defeat the dungeon's boss. He then explains that as the gate is still up, there must be a boss inside of the dungeon. Usually, they should report this to the association and wait for their decision. However, Song states that other hunters might get their hands on the boss first, which means their profits will drastically decrease, so Song suggests that they go ahead and deal with the boss themselves. He then says it could be dangerous and suggests all of them vote on it. And when the decision is made, they won't be able to refuse or say otherwise. They all start saying their votes on whether to stay or not. We then switch to Juhi, who decides to refuse and say she doesn't want to go. This leaves them with 8 votes to stay and 8 votes to go. Jinwoo hadn't decided yet and everything depended on him. After remembering his mother and his sister, Jinwoo makes the final decision and says he's going as well, and says he must have courage just this once. We start the next chapter by the group entering the second dungeon. It is made clear that they've been walking for about 40 minutes now, and the gate closes 1 hour after the boss is defeated, so they'll have 20 extra minutes to head back. After a few more minutes, they discover the boss's lair. Everyone looks rather surprised, as they've never come across a room with a door before, and even though it's their first time, it feels rather strange. Mr. Song asks if they're all going to head back empty-handed after coming all this way, and adds on to this by stating that they could be the first ones to discover a new dungeon. One of them states that Mr. Song has a ton of raids under his belt, and on top of that, he's an aggressive hunter who is C rank. And because of this, they decide to stick with him to the very end. As they enter the room, the torch lights flick on almost instantly. As they've never seen anything like this dungeon before, they decide to all split up and take a look around. They go around looking, and it seems like no one has been around there for a while. They think there's something spooky about these statues, and they're all holding some instrument. They see a super huge statue and think it's the boss. Jinwoo walks up to it and finds it strange that the statue scene is the only massive one. We then switch to Song, who has found a divination circle. The group discovers some writing on a statue and calls Song over to come and take a look at it. They state that it is a runic inscription which is labeled as the commandments of the Kartenon Temple. Song starts reading out the lines, and the first line says, "One shall worship God." And as he is reading the second line and third, Juhi spots something unusual and calls Jinwoo. Juhi tells Jinwoo to look at the huge statue, and she claims that its pupils were moving and it was staring at them. Jinwoo gets an unusual feeling and claims it's so quiet that it feels off. Song reads the last line of commands, which says, "Those who fail to obey these commands shall not be spared." All of a sudden, the doors slam shut behind them. One of them claims he's at the end of the rope and says he's tried to be patient, but this nonsense is the final straw, and adds on to this by saying they should never come to this godforsaken dungeon in the first place. He proceeds to say he's leaving and they should keep all the bosses and treasurer to themselves, as he doesn't give a damn. As he's about to leave, Song realizes something. He then tells him to not touch the door handle, but it's too late. One of the statues moves and completely slices the guy. Everyone is scared and afraid of what just happened. Jinwoo turns around with a look of horror on his face as the statue stares at him. Chapter 4 starts off at the dungeon where Chapter 3 ended, and we see one of the statues about to fire a large beam at the group. Jinwoo senses the attack coming simultaneously and tells everyone to duck down, just in time. After dodging that heavy beam, Song tells everyone to stay where they are, and if they stand up, they'll be attacked again. He claims that this dungeon doesn't look easy at all, and only the people who moved were attacked, and the ones who listened to Jinwoo ducked and survived. Jinwoo replies, being surprised, and Song tells him that he thought he shouted out because he knew something, but in reality, Jinwoo had sensed danger. Jinwoo realizes Song's arm has been cut off. Song claims that it's bearable and just needs help to stop the bleeding. Sung asks Jinwoo how high he thinks the statue ranks, and he replies by saying he's never been in a raid higher than D rank. He adds by saying this place is way beyond B rank. Sung turns to the statue and says that it's maybe S rank. He remembers the commandments from the Kuren temple earlier and recalls them. After Song finishes saying them, Jinwoo thinks he's realized something and questions if the god in the commandments listed could possibly be referring to the big statue scene. It's only a matter of time until they're annihilated. The next chapter starts with Song's arm still bleeding. Jinwoo asks if he's going to be okay as the bleeding hasn't stopped yet, but Song replies by saying he doesn't have a choice. He adds on to this by saying he thought they would clear this dungeon with ease, so he only brought 3 healers. But that wasn't the case. The guy who was attacked previously had no trace left of him. Song looked around and saw another one of their teammates sitting there, scared out of his mind. We then see Juhee, who has completely collapsed on the floor, and Song states that even though she's a B-rank healer, she's never experienced anything like this. Song claims that they shouldn't try fighting anything like that and should just focus on trying to figure a way out of there. All of a sudden, one of the members of the group get up, claiming he can't die here and just signed a deal with a major guild. Song shouts at him, asking what he is doing, but he claims that whoever he's up against, he will move faster and says he can do this. As he starts to sprint at an outrageous speed, the statue spots him and fires a huge beam which obliterates him, leaving only his legs. After seeing what just happened, everyone is very scared and starts screaming. Jinwoo is very pissed and punches the ground. He asks himself if this means that the statues can completely destroy them if they wanted to. He says they can kill them all right now and asks Song why they haven't done so. Jinwoo starts to think intensely and realizes something about the ways the statues attack. One of the guards attacks when you approach the doors, and the other one shoots light beams if you move. Using this information, Jinwoo realizes that their attacks and the dungeon are based on a set of rules. As Jinwoo continues to look around the room for clues, he remembers the commandments of the Kuren temple, which, as we know, were the set of rules which Song read out before they were attacked. Jinwoo asks Song what the first commandment was, and he responds by saying it was "Thou shalt worship God." As earlier established, the god in the commandments was assumed by Jinwoo to be the large statue. He slowly starts to stand up and Song questions what he thinks he is doing. Song stares at Jinwoo's eyes and tells himself that his eyes tells him that he hasn't given up on hope yet. As Jinwoo starts to stand up, the statue immediately spots him and is about to shoot a beam at him. However, Jinwoo's plan wasn't to stand up. All of a sudden, he goes back down and is in a position where he is on his knees as if he is worshipping someone. Jinwoo tells everyone to bow to the god. Everyone seems confused and they all ask if he's out of his mind. Jinwoo claims that the statue will attack if you stand above a certain height, but won't if you stoop down. This is what the "Thou shalt worship God" means. Song claims they have no choice and they all decide to follow Jinwoo's order. The statue sees them all kneeling before him and slowly stops the beam he was about to fire. Suddenly, a large grin develops on his face and everyone seems nervous and scared from it. A few minutes go by and one of the people from the group suspects that the statue has stopped attacking. He claims he's serious and the statue is not attacking, and everyone starts to stand up and rejoice, saying they've made it. But all that rejoice is shut down when they see the statue starting to move out of the chair. Everyone is completely scared to death and afraid that they have to fight it. Song turns to Jinwoo asking if he has any other tricks up his sleeve, but Jinwoo is shook and is out of ideas. Jinwoo tells everyone the commandment stating that it's the key. The second command says, "Thou shalt praise God." One of them stands up saying he used to be in a choir and can sing hymns. As he slowly approaches the moving statue, Jinwoo realizes that he is praising the wrong god and he gets squashed by the statue's foot.